It's draft week. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the 3rd and 20 Dynasty Podcast. I'm JT, joined by Frank, Jake, and Lounis. And like I just mentioned, it is draft week. But first, before we get into our big boards, which is going to take up the majority of our episode, we do have some news and notes. And kicking it off, what we finally were waiting for, what we were expecting for a while now, Aaron Rodgers has officially been traded to the New York Jets for what I believe is essentially a first and second compensation. I mean, there's more to it than that, but that seems to be what it's likely going to be. What's your guys' thoughts?
Overpay.
I didn't think it was as big an overpay as you guys were saying.
Listen, to give up a first and a second, and even I think the pick swap is also not being talked about enough because the Packers moved up to 13 from 15. So in this year's draft, I just think that the Jets ended up being backed into a corner and being forced to make this move. The Packers said, nope, we're not doing it. Nope, we're not doing it. Nope, we're not doing it. And they finally caved and gave them a first and a second and a pick swap up in the first round this year. So at the end of the day, I think the Jets were kind of just like their hand was forced and they had nowhere else to turn other than Zach Wilson, which I don't think they wanted to do. I think the Jets are going to be good next year. Don't get me wrong. I think they have a defense and they have weapons for Aaron Rodgers to play with here. But I do think the Jets overpaid for this on this price.
I thought it was a relatively fair deal. For Dynasty, I feel like Aaron Rodgers' price has actually increased, which is a little bit weird having price movement when we knew this deal was going to happen. It was almost a lock. But I've seen a lot of Garrett Wilson takes, which I don't disagree with, but I feel like whether or not Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback, like, I don't give a fuck with Garrett Wilson, right? Like, the guy is so good that I don't care who's throwing him the ball. He's still a top 5 dynasty receiver for me.
He was, same for me, top 5. Do you think he can get to that dynasty wide receiver 3 spot by the time the regular season starts?
Not by, I wouldn't say by the time the regular season starts, just because for me, he would
There's
need
still
to
like AJ Brown, CD Lamb.
Right. So, yeah, I think it would be CD Lamb who I'd still have ahead of him, just because CD Lamb still young, and just as a contender, you're just a smidge more comfortable. I'd rather have Garrett Wilson than AJ Brown, but I don't think that should be a crazy take. Right now, I think this is the highest price that AJ Brown is going to be for the rest of his career. So if you're a contender, you're obviously fine having an elite contending receiver on your roster, but like Garrett Wilson does have room to keep growing. And like I've just seen people ostracizing others for like, there's no way you can have Garrett Wilson after 1 year over AJ Brown. AJ Brown's at least this, that, and the other. It's like, well, it's not like Garrett Wilson doesn't have a better draft profile and had a better rookie season and is now at least on a good offense. Like, what do you mean I can't have him in the top 5, or that's ridiculous? Like, get the fuck out of here. That's where he's priced in startups. Let's be fucking real. Like, and if he's not wide receiver 5, he's going wide receiver 6 or 7, 1 or 2 picks behind your wide receiver 5.
I think
what about the other Jets players? Before we get into the Packers side of it, are you more confident on any of these dudes?
I mean, I just think overall being in a higher scoring offense benefits everyone. You know, look at like Breece Hall. I think there'll be much more scoring opportunities, and I'm sure Rodgers is going to use him a lot in the receiving game. Like we saw how much he liked throwing to Aaron Jones. Breece Hall is a guy who can catch the ball well out of the backfield. So assuming he comes back from his ACL injury, like fully healthy and everything, I think him and Garrett Wilson are going to have like monster seasons. And I think the next thing I was going to bring up, who would we consider the main number 2 in this offense? Lazard? Does this kind of have any impact on him for you guys, or is it kind of the same value? Because I feel like everyone's saying and everyone knows that Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall now probably going to have crazy seasons.
I don't know about Breece Hall, at least initially. Like, I'm not sure he's going to come back and immediately produce off of a major injury like that. He may need to be worked in, but you never know with running backs. We've seen guys come back from ACLs and 9 months, and then we've seen him kind of like a J.K. Dobbins have it linger for what it was like a year and a half or something like that. But in terms of the receiving, it's going to be weird because you have the rapport that Lazard has already built up with Rodgers, and the fact that Rodgers definitely vouched for him to get him in there. Versus, I just think that Corey Davis is a better receiver than Lazard is. So I don't really. I feel like Corey Davis is better at cost, but it's not something that I'm confident in. I'm like, oh, guaranteed going after the Jets number 2 or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, if also Rodgers pass says anything, he tends to find the guy he likes and throw the ball to him like 10 times, 15 times a game, just because he can. And I mean, I know it's been Devontae Adams in the past, but like, I assume Garrett Wilson is going to get the lion's share of these targets, and I don't think that's a shock to anybody. I think the number 2 on this offense is going to just be whoever has the better matchup that game, whether it's, Corey Davis or Lazard, or even if you throw in a tight end into this mix. Like, I just think it's going to be a variety here. I don't think I could say every week I'm confident in Lazard being that number 2 in this offense.
All right, Jordan Love. Is the Jordan Love hype warranted? Are any of us in on Jordan Love, especially considering you could have picked him up for probably like an early mid-second for a good amount of the offseason? I'm not sure about now. That price has probably gone up a little bit.
For sure.
Or are you just massive selling?
At cost, I'm massive selling. I just don't. I think if you can, especially now, you'll probably be able to get a late first, just because he's a starting quarterback, guaranteed starting quarterback in the NFL for probably at least the next 2 seasons with the Packers. They have, I think on draft night, it's going to tell a lot. I think if they end up with, JSN at pick 13 here, and they have JSN and Christian Watson, I think that offense is very interesting. And I just think, people are going to buy on the hype. People are going to say, oh, Rodgers sat behind Favre. Now Love sat behind Rodgers. Like, it's just one of these things that the story is there. So it's going to, boost his value. And I'm just not confident in Jordan Love. I just think it was an iffy prospect for me. And now sitting, and even when he's played, not looking great, it's just a tough scene for me here. I'd rather just take the first and re-roll it, honestly.
Someone that I think really benefits that now that the move is complete, that I don't think is being talked about, is A.J. Dillon. To me, the Packers, even with an MVP caliber quarterback in Rodgers, yeah, he was playing like crap, but the entire offense basically was. I really do think that we continue to see the Packers really lean on that run game. And yes, Aaron Jones is magnificent. Aaron Jones is going to be Aaron Jones. But that being said, I think we see A.J. Dillon cook a little bit. And the hype was too crazy last year. It was almost priced in that A.J. Dillon had a good shot of just taking over the backfield. Clearly, that's not going to be the case. But I think this is another like Antonio Gibson scenario where the guy got so overhyped that then he was trending down. Everyone's like, oh, he sucks. I'm going to give up on him. But when you kind of zoom out, Antonio Gibson and A.J. Dillon, still young backs, still can take over their backfields, right? In due time. It's still not outside of the range of outcomes, even though it's probably not likely. He's someone that I might be looking into trying to purchase potentially, especially if you can get him in that second round type of range. I think it could be a savvy investment.
And I agree with them being, I think they're going to run the ball a lot more. So that's easy. Just going up. Do you guys think Jordan Love is a starting quarterback in 2 years?
No.
Definitely no.
No. Do you think Aaron Rodgers is a starting quarterback in 2 years? Not that he'll get benched, but that he retires.
I think he retires, yeah.
So that's the part that I've been thinking about today with the Rodgers trade, dynasty-wise, with how to gauge his value. Because I legitimately have no idea how much longer he's going to play. My guess is 2 years, but there's been a ton of people saying, one, if he ended up playing 3 years, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, that's
I think it's 2 years.
Hard. that's how you would value him, just like assuming he has 2 more left in him.
Right, because to me, it's like, okay, this year you're obviously going to give it a go. Next year, without that first round pick, at least from the Jets' perspective, I think you're going to want to run it back as long as it's not catastrophically bad this year.
Yeah.
But then the year after, if that doesn't pan out, it's like now they have draft picks to go and get a quarterback and trade up if they wanted to, especially if they miss the playoffs and that draft pick is higher. So that's the point to me where it's like if the Jets wanted to or Aaron Rodgers retire, it makes sense at that point. Thoughts on Conklin? I always have liked him and have him rostered 100% of leagues, 3 teams. I think Conklin at cost is good. He's definitely worth a roster spot. He's been perennially undervalued the past couple of seasons. He's had like sneaky production. The only problem I have though is that what's the upside really? It's like his upside's probably a Tyler Higbee. So it's not like you're really swinging for the fences there. But having him in the mix of your tight end rotation on a contending roster is a good player to have. And it's not like you're going to be able to sell him for what he's probably worth to your team. Any other takes on the Aaron Rodgers trade?
Not too much. I feel like a lot of us saw this coming.
All right, sorry to cut you off there, Lounis, but I'll actually give it. I'll throw it back to you with Jameson WIlliams being suspended. You're the big Jameson WIlliams guy. It's unfortunate because I think that if I have tinfoil hat Frank coming here, I don't think he actually knew that was a rule. I wouldn't have thought that was a rule. Maybe they're explicitly told, but I think it's kind of bullshit, right? Like, oh, you're betting on a different sport, but you can't do it at the team facility. Like, okay, whatever, sucks. It's only 6 games. It's not the full year. Does this take a hit to your valuation of Jameson WIlliams at all, or do you not care?
From a dynasty perspective, no. I think when like redrafter in terms of like, it's disappointing this year because you kind of want him to get as much experience as possible, especially after missing a lot of his rookie year. They'll still have training camp, but it's just like, it sucks. Like it's 6 games, so it's not the end of the world, but it's just frustrating. But from a long-term perspective, no. Like, because I mean, this shouldn't, like, if you're a believer in his talent, it sucks that you have to wait 6 more games, but it's not really like this is an injury that's going to like hinder him ability wise or something. It's just him having to sit out 6 games.
I will say this presents, if you are a JMO guy, a buying opportunity for the first time really that wasn't, at least in my opinion.
I feel like a lot of the hype on him has kind of died a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I just think you take the end of the season last year where he comes back and doesn't really get not even just targets, but snaps. He wasn't really playing a whole lot. Now you have this. There are managers that have Jameson WIlliams that are willing to sell at a singular, probably like random first round pick valuation I've seen.
I honestly think selling him is probably a good move at this point. Sorry to be that guy, but like he wasn't getting snaps last year. Now he goes out and gets suspended for 6 games. I just think that's going to give people 6 games to step up and prove who's the wide receiver 2 in this offense. We all know it's Amirat is going to lead the way at the tight end or from the wide receiver 1. I just don't like the direction this is trending between the no snaps now being suspended. Like it's just giving too many guys too many opportunities to actually themselves as a wide receiver 2. I know they went up and traded up and got paid up for Jameson WIlliams in last year's draft, and that's great. But we've seen people do that before and just not work out. I am kind of he's a face planner at this point, and I would probably still sell while I can get a first round pick.
What I would say to that is if you believed him enough talent-wise to draft him where you drafted him, I'm not really going to hold the end of last season like in too much stock because of like the limited snaps, and he's coming back from an ACL injury where we don't know what like the inside in terms of how fully back he was to 100%. Like we've seen a lot of guys, it takes like that extra season after the initial injury to really get back into their form. And then like in like the little snaps he played, like once he did get the ball in his hands, you still saw the explosiveness here and there. So my main thing is with selling. I think if you were a non-believer in him from the start and you just happen to have him, that makes sense. But I think if you spent the draft capital investment, he hasn't had the chance to be really like fully healthy on the field yet. So I think selling at this point would be like selling low. And to be fair, like that's what I'm saying. If you just didn't believe in his talent, you want to sell before he's fully healthy on the field because you don't think he's going to be that good. That's fine. But I think if you do, then it would be premature. Because if he was coming out now, I think he would be the wide receiver 2 in the draft class. As a prospect coming out.
Yeah, he'd be close to that. I might still have Addison over him.
That's fair. I'd have him 2 behind JSN, and then Addison at 3.
What's going on, Isley? Just a friendly reminder: Hooker old as hell.
I saw a tweet me reminding whoever, if a team drafts him in the first round, his 5th-year rookie option is going to be when Hooker's 30 years old.
That's nuts.
This is just crazy.
Right. I don't know. This is a really, and this is kind of what separates dynasty teams right here is what you do with a player like a Jameson Williams, because you could definitely see both sides of the argument, right? You have the easy excuses that he just wasn't fully back. It was his rookie season for why he wasn't getting the snaps. And same thing with the suspension, right? Like you can kind of just make excuses for that. And I don't know. I really don't know what I would be doing because I see both sides of the argument. I feel like my gut's telling me to buy.
Because someone who has him, I'm holding. I'm not looking to sell low. If you could get him at a cheap price, I'd be for it. Because again, like we haven't really had the chance to fully see everything. And you know how much this team invested in him. And that wide receiver 2 spot is wide open. Like you talk about other guys stepping up. Who would be the front runner to take his wide receiver 2 spot on that Lions team?
Your best guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I still think it's kind of up for the taking as soon as he's back from it.
So,
especially with DJ Chark gone.
Really, really interesting scenario there with Jameson Williams. I'd be interested to hear that boy fast as fuck, but history has not been kind to someone with his production profile in his rookie season. Injury be damned. It's like the dude had a crazy last season at college, right? Like crazy. Most people that hit that threshold of production in any season tend to be pretty good. And I at least see the argument. He really hasn't had the chance. It's not like he showed up and he stunk. And it's like, well, maybe he'll turn it around. It's like, no, he just hasn't showed up.
I mean, there's a reason he's not getting snaps. Let's be honest. That like Lunas pointed out, that wide receiver 2 position hasn't been great. I mean, Chark was
last year. They did have Chark was decent, and
fine,
I still think
but they also were playing what's his name, Reynolds or some or other.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is just
Josh Reynolds. Thank you.
I don't think it's a scenario where it's like, I don't know, someone like a Sky Moore where like they're fully healthy, but they didn't really get the shot, and you could just blame it on them being a rookie and saying like, oh, the coach just kind of wants vets in there for this. Like, we've seen NFL players like have to kind of take that next half a season to get fully right from an ACL tear.
So we have. I'm not saying that, but I don't know. I just feel like if you're going to trade up into the 12th pick to get somebody, knowing he's already injured, and then he comes back and he doesn't play, it's kind of a red flag to me on some sort of work ethic, some sort of personality off the field, and then to be suspended for gambling doesn't help my thoughts on that. So I'm just re-rolling while there's still people that'll take him for a first.
All right. Do you want to get into big boards?
Sure.
Yeah. So I've been working on the consensus for the big boards. Almost done with it. You guys all spelled Quentin Johnson's name wrong, though. So that
did we?
Slight issue.
Yeah, it was Johnson here. I copy and pasted it. So don't blame me. It's someone else's fault.
Someone's gonna have to fess up for that.
He really
Sounds like
spells
they-
it with a T?
What do you mean he really spells it like that? Like, yeah, it's his name.
Oops.
He just decided to spell with a T. What a dick.
Yeah, what a guy.
All right, so I'm in the process of updating our, because that I think I don't have the hyphen in Jackson Smith and Jigba. There's probably a couple other just random things there screwing with our data, but I'll get to the bottom of it.
I guess we can just go by round. Maybe that'll make it cleanest on the screen. Wait, hold on a second.
Yeah.
I'm screwing this up. I'm sorry. I'm setting up the thing on the screen. Give me a second. All right, that should be pretty good. All right, it is draft time, and with draft comes probably my favorite segment of the year, the rookie big board. So, quick joke before we get into it. I was joking around with Lounis that, oh, Lounis, your big board definitely sucks.
Right as we joined, he didn't even look at my board yet. He was just
yeah, I did not look at his board. I was just giving him crap, and it turns out we have the exact same first round. Literally
the first couple picks of the second round are like kind of close. It's just like swapping a few guys up at one or two spots.
So, all right, I think generally speaking, most of the stuff is pretty standard. So I guess we can just hit on the outliers. And first things first, we all knew JT was high on Quentin Johnston, but I didn't know that JT was high on that Quentin Johnston crack, because holy crap, 103.
Yeah, hold on, I'm editing the Quentin Johnston thing, by the way, and getting him back where he belongs as consensus. He's 107 in ours, which makes me have to move this stuff down. Yeah, I just think Quentin Johnston is, well, it's more so kind of a knock on the quarterbacks, like that aren't Bryce Young. I don't know what the deal is with CJ Stroud currently. I don't know if Frank disappeared for you guys, but I don't see him on mine. Yeah. Hopefully I'm still talking to you guys. So with CJ Stroud potentially falling in this draft, who knows what the deal is. I still think he's going to go number 2 to the Texans, but like maybe he doesn't. And so with everyone kind of like hesitant about the rest of these quarterbacks, I'm not going to just take a mediocre quarterback when I could take like what I perceive to be an elite wide receiver. So
sure, but I just think as of now, I am building this big board with the assumption that all of these quarterbacks we're talking about are going within the top 10.
Yeah, but even so, like CJ Stroud doesn't give me that, like CJ Stroud feels like we're looking at like a Kirk Cousins kind of player. Like you're gonna get Kirk Cousins points, which
as bad as that sounds, Kirk Cousins,
it's fine. Yeah, it's
22-year-old Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good for his career.
That's fine, but Quentin Johnston, I just think, gives you that potential elite play. Like
I was gonna say, like, what tier prospects do you view Quentin Johnston in terms of like previous drafts wide receivers coming out? Like, is he in that like?
So he's not Jamar Chase level.
No.
But I'll put him with like the Drake Londons. I think he's in that like high level of playmaker.
Wow.
So
do you think he would have been your wide receiver 1 last year, or like him in London 1A 1B?
Him, London, and Burks probably would have been my top 3. I was admittedly, I still like Garrett Wilson. I just wasn't as high. Yeah. I'm still updating this consensus board, trying to get to the bottom of it, but.
If Levis goes to the top 4 picks, it's worth reevaluating his ranking. We've done this before with Herbert and Allen.
We've also done it with Zach Wilson.
I think there's merit to that, though, because to be honest with you, I was really close to putting Will Levis at 106, especially with the hype that he's been getting recently. The problem is that
I was really close to honestly swapping him and Anthony Richardson for QB2, QB3, and then overall 4 and 7, whatever I have.
Wait, Levis
5 and 7.
You mean between 3 and QB 3 and 4?
Yeah, I was very close to making Levis QB 3.
Oh, for me, it was the closer one was Richardson Stroud for QB 2. That was the tougher decision for me. Levis, I was close to putting at my 7th overall spot though, I switched to last second. Earlier today, I had him at 7, but I decided to switch to Addison. I mean, like, I do think there's a good chance he goes in the top 6. And you could bring up cases like Herbert, and then people who like don't believe that will bring up a case like Zach Wilson, where kind of everyone was lower on Zach Wilson. He went number 2, and then still kind of went shitty. So that's what makes it kind of hard to predict. I do see like the hype in terms of just talent, and like arm strength, but there were just guys that I feel like safer about taking when I'm considering like the risk. I know like the ceiling, etc. You make those same arguments for Anthony Richardson, but I feel a bit more safer about him and feel like he has a higher ceiling. And that's why I have him there. And I mean, it's not that it's low. I mean, the guys that I have ahead of him, I'm all just really high on.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem I have as well, is that Will Levis, to me, if he were to jump anyone, like Jahmyr Gibbs and Addison definitely could be jumped, because the problem I have with Gibbs is that as a pure runner, I just don't think he's that amazing. Like when you compare Jahmyr Gibbs to the 2020 running backs, I think all of them were better just with the rock in their hands, right? I need someone to make a guy miss at the second level. I think basically all of the top 5 or 6 running backs in that class were better.
Which ones were the 2020 ones? That was
CEH, Jonathan Taylor.
Oh, okay, that one.
J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers.
Yeah.
I think I'm missing one.
DeAndre
Swift. I guess DeAndre Swift. I would, and then that's the issue, is that like to me, Jahmyr Gibbs is this DeAndre Swift. He is fantastic. He has a great receiving profile. He has great one cut, pretty decent vision. It's just I don't think he's this dynamic running back like Christian McCaffrey is.
No, I mean not CMC level. CMC was just a fucking
okay. No, that's not even Travis Etienne.
Crazy.
Travis Etienne to me is a dude that's dynamic. He just needed to learn how to play in the NFL, right? He just needed that extra bit of vision, that extra bit of polish to really get a feel and get confident in the scheme. That's what he needs. I feel like I would rather bet on that than someone that is definitely confident in the scheme and everything, but I'm just not sure they have that crazy top end.
I view him in a tier ahead of DeAndre Swift coming out as a prospect, and I like DeAndre Swift a lot. I'm just really high on Jahmyr Gibbs. There was a report that came out that it's expected that he goes in the first round. I think it was Peter Schrager or something, but saying that 2 running backs are going to go in the first round. If he does go in the first round, do you feel safer about him?
Man, I just don't understand buying him in the first round. I really don't understand that. Like, what's the fucking point?
It doesn't.
And especially if you're going to fucking trade up.
Anything.
I mean, it could be at the very end, like Philadelphia at like 30.
Yeah, but why not just stay put and take Charbonnet in the mid-second?
Because Jahmyr Gibbs, for me at least, is like.
Dude, I'll go to pick 30, trade back, and get myself a 5th round pick. Howie Roseman, box that up and then trade it for an all-pro level player on a 1-year deal. I'll just keep doing that every year instead of taking listen, I'm not as JT on this argument that you can never take a running back in the first round. But like, if I'm spending a damn pick on a running back in the first round, give me Bijan. Like, give me Bijan.
And I don't think. I mean, it's kind of hard to predict where Bijan's going to go. Everyone's kind of saying in like the top 15 or 16, but we'll see. I feel like this draft, like no one really knows what's happening. But I don't know. Like in terms of whether I think he's worth a first round pick or not, that's a different debate. But I'm saying if he is, I'd feel a little bit better about it. And I'm already really high on him as a prospect. Like for me, choosing between him and JSN, I guess it wasn't that hard. Like I really like JSN a lot, but like there was some consideration there. And I have him like, I think there's a mini drop off after 106, like in this draft class. And I like Jordan Addison, but I view a drop off, the small one after Gibbs.
I feel like I'm talking myself out of Gibbs actively, and I'm about to like move him down live. But this is the debate I was having. It's that what if Jordan Addison, Will Levis, at least for me, Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, Jalen Hyatt, Josh Downs, and Dalton Kincaid are all just closer to being legitimately elite at their positions than Jahmyr Gibbs? Now, I think one thing that Jahmyr Gibbs is being helped by is the fact that a lot of the running back situations right now are just kind of murky as shit. It's just everyone's got a shit show at running back other than like 6 or 7 or 8 teams.
All right, I got the consensus. I think mostly figured out. The third and fourth rounds might be a little bit of a mess, but just updated that there. So now I'm going to catch up on chat and everything. I'm seeing Isley saying I'm wilding for putting Quinn Johnson up there.
You are.
I don't know. I just think he's getting slept on. It's the same arguments every year for that kind of wide receiver. It happens every year. That kind of player falls, like an AJ Brown, like a DK Metcalf. It's just bigger wide receiver, limited route tree, but they just happen to run the same routes that every NFL wide receiver runs. So it doesn't really matter. Then you talk about he disappears against like, I don't know, state your random team here, but then they discount how he goes off against Kansas, for example, or they discount how elite level prospects also have disappeared for different games, right? So I don't know. It's just the stuff that I'm seeing about Quinn Johnson just isn't moving me off Quinn Johnson. Then going down to now we're talking about Jahmyr Gibbs. Again, it's just like he's smaller than I'd like him to be. If he gets that first round draft capital, I know that's what you were just debating, Frank, I'd be more in on Jahmyr Gibbs and I'd probably bump him up higher. But I, like you're saying, don't really think a team's going to take him in the first.
I guess the last thing I'll say on Gibbs is man, it's just that these running back situations are so crap right now. And what we've seen from the rookie running backs in the past, it's that if a team gives you draft capital, they're going to give you volume because it looks dumb as shit if you spend a really early pick on a running back and you don't feed his ass. And you don't need to be that good at running back to produce when you get volume. Like, we've seen plenty of running backs who were pretty just average at best, even like under average, produce when they are just given the rock. And that could happen. I think that's one thing that we've seen in Dynasty recently is some running backs in their first season going off the ground running and then becoming wildly overvalued because everyone's like, well, this is guaranteed for the next 4 or 5 years. You're Antonio Gibson. He's going to be the leader of my backfield for the next 5 years, and I'm going to get high-end RB2 production. And that's what he's valued like. And so it's like it's almost like the positive and the negative with Gibbs, where if you take him, he's probably pretty safe his first season, but then after that, he becomes extremely volatile.
Sure. One last thing I will say about Gibbs, he's going to be one of those running backs where in half PPR and PPR leagues, you're going to get receiving value and catches with him in whatever offensive role he's in, which kind of helps his floor a little bit on a week-to-week basis rather than running backs who maybe they're like, obviously Nick Chubb is like the best at it in the league, but someone like a Nick Chubb where it's like you could easily have those weeks where it's like 80 yards, you just kind of get 8 points and 0 catches. Where I think like those running backs are going to get like 3 or 4 more catches a game that they kind of provide like a little bit of a higher floor. I think that's another benefit to Gibbs. But I understand every point that you made. I'm interested to see where he goes in the draft.
I mean, the fact of the matter is that Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs are probably the 2 safest draft picks in the class at their respective ADPs. They have to have an absolutely catastrophic season to lose value.
Yeah.
All right, we can get lower. And who have we not touched on that we want to touch on here?
I guess. Well, we kind of talked about Will Levis and the Justin Herbert comparison.
How about can Charbonnet be Monty/Mixon, and whether or not and Zach Charbonnet's value and consensus he's 112. I don't have Charbonnet in my first round. Lunis does not either. You guys have him at 112. We're definitely lower on consensus on Charbonnet compared to everyone else.
Yeah,
I just think we're higher on other players. Like, I like Zach Charbonnet, the player. Do I wish he came out last year? Yeah, but I still like him as a player, and I think he's going to have he's going to get the good draft capital. I'd probably be, a round 2, day 2 pick. And And like at the end of the day, if you're getting that top 50, top 60 draft capital in the NFL as a running back, you're going to get touches, like you said, Frank. It's just stupid to see, have a spend a second or a third round pick on a running back if you're not going to give him the ball. But yeah, I mean, I think we're just higher on other players. Like I love Josh Downs. I'm just not going to take Charbonnet over Josh Downs. Like it's just stuff like that. You have Hyatt above him. You have Josh Downs above him. Like I think you even have Kincaid above him. We'll get there in a minute, but I just think we're higher on other players, not to knock Charbonnet.
Yeah. And I don't know, whenever like this is more so JT's talking point, and I don't hold it all the time to be true because we saw with ETN was still now stud on the NFL level, but like Jake said, you were kind of hoping that he would declare last year. So, but I still, I mean, 201 is good value. It's just like kind of Jake said, like it's mostly just liking the guys ahead of him.
I think that Charbonnet is really weird for me because in the beginning of the process, I'm going to stick to my guns now because I have him as just a very early second as a prospect level.
Like, do you think he goes in the second round of the NFL draft?
I think he goes in the end of the second, yeah. At least the end of the second. I think there's too many teams that could use a running back of Charbonnet's potential. Because Charbonnet is weird for me because he kind of is not great at running in between the tackles. Like, yeah, he's a big-ass dude and he can hit you, but all things considered, he really is... I mean, the UCLA scheme is great for him because they're always optioning one of the ends or one of the linebackers, so they have a natural advantage in the run game, and he's just a big-ass dude, so he just goes in the hole, sees someone, and then lowers his shoulder into him. Doesn't really... But then again, like, on the outside, when he gets the ball in space, he makes a ton of people miss. I want to see that, like, elusiveness and a next level feel in the run scheme from him in between the tackles. So it's like he's just kind of like good. He's not great, but he's good. How replaceable is that? That's kind of the issue. I think he's gonna produce, but like once again, how long is he gonna command a backfield for?
It doesn't matter. So I forget who I saw this, who tweeted it. I wish I can give him credit, but basically it was every running back selected in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft, their dynasty ranking has increased from year 1 to year 2. So if you take a guy like Charbonnet, who you say is going to go in the second round, and I think I agree with you, this time next year, he will be ranked higher than he is now. And if that's the case, he's going to be ranked probably as a top 12 running back. At that point, you can, as a second year player, top 12 dynasty running back, you can trade that for a lot. So just that alone is going to make me take him in the first round here.
I agree with that thought process.
Yeah, I do agree. I do think there is a chance that he goes in the early third, but I expect him to go in the second. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. That makes me want to put him higher. I'll give you that.
Depending on where he goes in the second, I guess he could move up. I do want to point out another player I wanted to talk about, unless anyone else wanted to say anything on Zach.
Yeah, I do want to make one last point.
Go ahead.
I think we can all agree that that's an inefficiency in the dynasty market, though. The fact that these second-year running backs get wildly overpriced. Kenneth Walker is a good example here, right?
It's completely a scheme of the dynasty market as a whole. Like, it just shows how much people put stock into these young running backs rather than guys that have been around for a year or two longer. Like, we're talking about like guys like Saquon and stuff are being outranked by a lot of these, second year backs now. And you're just like, Saquon is a top back in the league. I know he's 3 years older, but like, he's going to get his contract. He's going to play. And when he plays, he's a beast. So it's just I agree. It's just an inefficiency, and it's something that you could take advantage of. Honestly, you just take the running back this time next year. They're going to be worth more, and you sell them off and try it again.
It's because people kind of overrate like the ticking clock. Like running back's a position like someone could be like 24 or 25 years old and they'll be like, oh, he's old. I need to like get a younger one. And like I know running backs don't have the longer shelf life compared to any other positions, but like sometimes it kind of gets taken too far on that side. To the point Jake was saying. So that's kind of why it happens.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you invested in Aaron Jones 2 years ago, when he was going to fall off, you're probably pretty happy with your back-to-back running back one seasons. But as a drafter, you can take advantage of that market by scooping them up and selling. Yeah, but like, I just feel like people are going to figure it out. You know, and then
it is a bubble.
And then I'm left holding all these running backs that I want to sell because I don't know. Like, it's an interesting topic. I really don't know what the right answer is. Maybe the answer from this conversation, I want to just change my big board to running back, but I'm not going to do that.
I wouldn't do that, but
Lounis, who do you want to talk about?
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of loop Jake into it. So we all have Zay Flowers as a first-round guy. And me, Frank, and JT all have him as our wide receiver 4. Jake, I noticed had him at wide receiver 2. That stuck out to me. I kind of want to like hear more on your side of that with what has him ahead of Addison for you. And Quentin Johnson, who's JT's 103.
To me, honestly, Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison are very similar types of players, right? They're both 5'11", 5'10", whatever it is. And they're both guys that just get open. I like both of them. I think they're both phenomenal route runners, great with the ball in their hands. And it's just, I think Zay Flowers is a little more, you know, with the yards after catch than Jordan Addison is here. And I just like both. I just think both of them translate more to the next level. They're both great route runners. I just think their floor is much higher than Quentin Johnson. Quentin Johnson, I agree with JT, has this massive upside, but I just don't love the player. I mean, I just think he body catches the ball a lot. I don't think he has a great route tree. I just think he is big and fast, which is great and all. And I still have him as a first-round pick, obviously, here. I have him at 110. But the other guys, to me, just play the wide receiver position better. I understand they don't have the size. They're kind of right there with the speed. But Zay Flowers, to me, just sticks out. I know he played on a shitty BC team, but they just really said, okay, Zay, here's the ball. Go score. And he did. You know, there's a lot of plays where he high points the ball and he goes over guys, even though he's only 5'10", 5'11", whatever he's listed at. So, like, to me, he shows everything you want to be in a wide receiver 1, except he's, 3 inches too short to fit that category for JT. And to me, I just think he reminds me a lot of a young Antonio Brown, and it's just not somebody that I'm going to pass on, to be honest with you guys.
Without disparaging Quentin Johnson, he was almost my wide receiver 3 over Addison. I really like Zay Flowers. Quentin Johnson aside, it's just, you know, the typical JT knocks of like him being a 4th-year wide receiver, him being smaller than your typical what you want to see. Or sorry, not why am I blanking? Yeah, 4th-year wide receiver. I'm right.
Yeah.
That's kind of just the all things being equal. I had him and Addison very similar. I kind of was giving Addison a break for what happened this year because he was battling injuries and whatnot, and kind of trying to use more of his pit film and stats. But all things being equal between those two, I just gave the slight nod to Addison. But I think those two are very close as to who I have wide receiver 3 and 4. And if like push came to shove and I had to pick one on draft day, I'm not convinced I take Addison. I think I might actually pull the trigger on Jordan Addison. I mean, on Zay Flowers. Sorry.
Right, I agree with you that this gap has been closing for me. I've been kind of lower on Zay Flowers simply because I just feel like he should have had more production. But I will agree with you in that I think his film is good, and I think he's a high floor player. I really don't think that Zay Flowers is going to come in and struggle to translate to the league outside of something completely crazy happening with him.
Do you guys think he goes first round? Or like early
I
second?
do think so.
You guys think he goes first. If he falls to the second round, how does it?
No,
he won't, so we don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah, Zay Flowers, first receiver off the board prop. Thanks.
If that happens, that'd be fucking nuts.
So one last point I want to make here, we can kind of use this to transition into the second round, is that I actually think that this year you're pretty happy at the 112, where in basically the past, like since 2020, I feel like you were unhappy at 112. You were like, well, shit, 112 sucks. And this year 112 is actually pretty nice.
I don't know. I think Waddle was 2021. So
no. Waddle, there was a top 11 in 2021. I mean, we can go through it really quickly, but I distinctly remember there being a top 11, at least for me.
No, I think Jake's right. It was Waddle or ETN at 12.
Hold on. No, because there was 3 receivers, 3 running backs.
I mean, I could just
5
pull up
QBs. I think that's what it was, because there was no tight end that you really wanted that bad. Oh wait, no, there was Kyle Pitts.
Did Waddle go before or after Mac Jones? I think he's before Mac Jones.
He went after Mac Jones in a lot of drafts. Yeah. That's what it was. So I can just read you our leagues. So obviously Trevor Lawrence, Kyle Pitts, Justin Fields, Jamar Chase.
Yeah, you're right. You actually were happy at 112.
Najee Harris, Zach Wilson, Devontae Smith, Mac Jones, Travis Etienne, Jalen Waddle. That was the first round.
Yeah, you are happy at 112 then. Yeah, I was completely wrong.
Last year 112 stunk. I ended up taking Christian Watson and it worked out, but I was not happy.
I have someone in chat that you might just upset about that one.
I didn't think 112 last year was bad. I liked it. I
hated 112 and 201
last year. When 201
I always
last
liked
year were garbage.
But
it worked out, but I took Christian Watson begrudgingly.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, if we go into the this range here, I can highlight on the screen. Right around these players, from my board at least, Will Levis at 8, all the way down to Zach Charbonnet at 202, pick 14. I love all of these players at their ADP. I just think that all things considered, you're getting a pretty good deal. So all the way up until and if we get added players in here, you never know if a Darnell Washington sneaks into this with good draft capital, right? What if he goes to the Bengals? All of a sudden, Darnell Washington's going to join this group of players. Same thing with Michael Mayer. You might be able to add him, and then whatever other running back, if they get drafted in the second round, you might be able to add them in. So this very late first, very early second, I think is extremely strong this year.
I like it as well, especially some of the receivers you can get around this range. I was going to ask JT, because I like him, and Jake, and Frank have him kind of around the 206-ish, kind of mid-second round. Marvin Mims. I like I actually really like Marvin Mims.
JT really likes Marvin Mims.
111.
Yeah,
JT,
Marvin Mims. Yes, Frank.
Yeah, what? Sell me on Marvin Mims. Why is he good?
He's just better than Josh Downs, and that's all. I've looked at both. I've looked at both. I've went into the analytics. I've watched the film. He's just better than Josh Downs. So to me, wherever you guys have Josh Downs, I think that's where Marvin Mims belongs, and that's kind of where I slotted him into that 111. I think he gets good draft capital. I think he's an early second round pick, maybe mid second round pick at the worst. I think he was very productive when he did play for Oklahoma. So I don't know. I'm just in on Marvin Mims. He's a little smaller than I'd like, but other than that, nothing really to discount him for.
All right, I like him a lot. I mean, draft capital is going to be a big aspect for me because I don't see him going early second. I saw him more. I don't know. This draft is so hard to predict. Like I feel like so much of my big board's going to change once I actually see the draft capital a lot of these guys get. And I've been able to follow every single report about like, oh, this guy's going to end up here, this guy's going to end up here. I'm just kind of judging off what I think off their talent. But okay, it's fair. So you have him ahead of Josh Downs, but also Jalen. We have pretty low.
Over who?
Jalen Hyatt.
Oh yeah, I thought I was going to be like kind of in line with where consensus was on Hyatt because I do think he might get first round draft capital. But at the end of the day, I just have him profiled as like a field stretcher, and I don't think that's going to result in a lot of fantasy points. So that's why I have Jalen Hyatt down there where he is.
I was just pulling up about Hyatt really quickly. I am starting to really like Jalen Hyatt.
You've been on him for a little while now. I don't know.
I think the misconception and where I differ from other people with Hyatt is that there's great context to his limited route tree, right? That Tennessee offense runs that run and shoot bullshit where we're stacking our receivers literally on the sideline, and just chucking the pill, right? It's hilarious to watch. It's awesome. Actually, such a cool offense. But so like when he's only asked to run goes and slants, it kind of makes sense. There's literally only like one way you can go. You can't go to where the sideline is because you're already there, right? There's no outbreaking routes over there. So yeah, there's context behind that, and I think when he was asked to run different routes, he was pretty fucking good. I think that he's not going to have a hard time separating with people. And you want to talk about a guy that can make contested catches and can make catches, and then someone hits him from the back and things like that. I think he's actually really underrated as like just a pure receiver. So when you compare him to a guy like Henry Ruggs, I don't think he has necessarily that second gear. I feel like when Ruggs had the ball in his hands, I felt like he reached a second gear that
Ruggs' speed was different.
That Hyatt, I feel like Hyatt's speed hits when he's going on that deep ball and the ball's not in his hands. But I feel like when Ruggs got the football in his hands, his speed was crazy. That I feel like I don't get from Hyatt, even though they're both incredibly fast players.
Yeah, no, they're fast, but I still have, even though Hyatt's he's like viewed as the main speed guy, Ruggs was kind of in a different tier. And even someone like Jalen Waddle, I don't even think Hyatt's on like Waddle's level in terms of speed, but he's still like, I still do think he's very fast and will be able to stretch the field well in the NFL.
But I love Hyatt at his ADP. I think Hyatt is a dude that I'm going to be ending up with in a lot of my in a lot of my leagues. But the problem is, I think there's a pretty darn good chance that he ends up going in the first round of the NFL draft. And when that happens, I think we see the ADP climb pretty high.
Especially because I think he's going to go late first, where it's going to be like a team that made the postseason, that made the playoffs and has a pretty good roster. And so, like, it's like, how much is he going to, like, skyrocket if a team like the Chargers drafts him? Like, which would make sense. Like, they need speed on the outside. So that's why I'm really interested to see.
At the end of the day, he's still the wide receiver 3 there.
Yeah, Keenan Allen's getting older. Michael Williams gets injured sometimes.
Nonetheless, that first round tag next to Jalen Hyatt is going to make him way more attractive. His ADP is going to go up.
Oh, I found another player that we have to. There's another player that I'm gonna have to fix. You guys all spelled Israel Abanaconda's name wrong, but not the hard part of his name. His first name. You guys all spelled his first name wrong.
Oh shit!
Well, clearly we're not the team to vote for the spelling bee.
No, we're not the all-state spelling team over here.
Bad on our end.
All right,
so let me ask this though. Now that we transition into the second round, are we too low on Dalton Kincaid? I kind of thought that. Do we all have him in the second round? Yeah, we all have him in the second round.
Yeah.
Are we too low?
I don't think so. I just like a lot of those receivers I have.
To be fair, if he ends up going in, the middle of the first round, like he's being projected, we are probably too low on him. Just for that fact alone, like Josh
Again,
Downs is not
tight end premium league.
Josh Downs is not going to be in the first round. Zach Charbonnet is not going to be in the first round. Jalen Hyatt probably will be. So like at that point, he should probably be around that 110, through 112 range, probably. Yeah.
I mean, sure, but I feel okay with it. I mean,
Listen,
first time I have him as my tight end too.
If you can get a guy like Kincaid, who's projected to be a very good tight end, not Kyle Pitts or anything like that, but a very solid tight end. I think I was on the phone with Frank earlier, and he's like, if you can get Pat Freiermuth with 15 additional targets, he's worth the first round pick in the rookie draft here. Because then you're going to get a tight end that's really going to be probably about tight end 4 or 5, with the potential of any day jumping up above with, the decline of Kelsey, the decline of Waller, the decline of Kittle with just age, right? So, like, if you can get a tight end that's going to put up consistent, targets and catches and receptions here, he's probably worth that, especially in tight end premium, which is the way we like to play. I just think it's definitely because the tight end position is such an advantage, right?
No,
rolling out Kelsey every week is a massive advantage. It just is because he's almost a guaranteed 20 points every week, and it's just compared to other people being like, well, mine got 40 yards and 2 catches, like great, 6 points, right? Even with the PPR, like the extra tight end premium here, so like. I don't think it's factored in enough, and I do think if he ends up going like to the Packers at 13, like I've seen that one, like there's just a lot of ways that I think his stock's gonna go up post draft.
I mean, sure, and like especially if someone like a Josh Downs slides a little bit in the draft, or Charbonnet for sure. I'd say the first issue probably is. I mean, I have him 203, so I'm not really that far off. It's like a matter of like 3.
Right. I mean, I have him 202, so like to jump him up 4 spots or something.
Yeah, which is easy to do once you see draft capital and stuff. But I'd say probably my second issue, and I know me and JT are on the same side. You two have Kincaid number 1. He's my tight end too. I still like Darnell Washington. Even though I recognize Kincaid may get the better draft capital, as a receiving threat, I like Darnell Washington.
Yeah, I just want the big. Darnell Washington, he's not just big; he's super athletic. I mean, we could get into Darnell Washington because he's there too.
We can talk, let's talk
big and shocking. JT likes the big, fast guy.
Yeah, no, my problem with Darnell Washington and why I don't have him as like a smash first round pick is because he's actually like elite at blocking. And so I'm worried that an NFL team might bring him in and just keep him in to block. And if he's not
block merchant.
If he's not out catching passes, we're screwed. Like there might be like a 2 tight end system, and because I mean he's got a crazy A-dot. Obviously his receptions were low, but he was also playing on a team with Brock Bowers, and that is where you do have you have a nasty receiving tight end and you have a nasty blocking tight end, and you might as well do both. But Darnell Washington
also, he played on Georgia that runs the ball 1,000 times.
That also
had a senior citizen at quarterback.
Yeah, Georgia's also like a notorious we're going to spread the ball around, rotate players more than other teams will kind of team.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And I see JT's like point. I don't view that as a total negative, though. I think it could be a positive in terms of he gets on the field faster.
I feel like a fraud for not having Kincaid at 112, though.
A fraud.
I think come draft, I probably will, especially if someone like Downs doesn't go as early as I'm expecting, or whatever one of the receivers above him. If they go just like later than I think, right? Like outside of, let's say, the top 40 picks, and Kincaid is going pick 20, then yeah, I would definitely take him. The only problem I have, though, is that once we see Kincaid's landing spot and we recognize the fact that like no one has good tight ends, like that dominate target share or anything, what if we see that narrative develop and then we do see Kincaid pop up into not 112, 201, but into 111, 110, and he's fighting around there?
No, I'm out at Dalton Kincaid at that price.
A 110?
I think the point that Frank's trying to make here is like whoever your tight end one ends up being, if they get the draft capital that a lot of these guys are projected to get right now, like we're projected 3 tight ends in the first round, like a lot of people are. How high do you take them in a tight end premium league? Just because, like we've said, that advantage is significant, and if you can find a guy that is that young stud tight end for a 110, a 109 even, like, is that worth it?
I think you're looking for the needle in the haystack doing that kind of stuff, though. Because first of all, it's going to take a while for the tight ends to develop, right? Like we're still waiting for Kyle Pitts, for example, to hit that threshold. He had very good yards after the catch.
Yeah, he put up 1,000 yards one year.
Yeah.
Muth, we're still kind of waiting, right?
Yeah. We're still waiting for these young tight ends to break out. So you're giving up that advantage in terms of early on, the value advantage in terms of early on, where we're talking about like a Kenneth Walker, more aptly probably Chris Olave, because that's about where he was going. Like if a Chris Olave goes off and you get that kind of player, say it's Jalen Hyatt this year, they boom. Like Jalen Hyatt's a top 10 wide receiver, I think, at this point on Keep Trade Cut. That's not going to happen with Dalton Kincaid. It is very, very, very rare. I can't even think of an instance where
Mark Andrews, but he wasn't highly valued.
Yeah, and like Greg Dulcich kind of popped off this year. Greg Dulcich hasn't really seen a whole big increase yet. I mean, maybe that's a good sign to buy him now, but like these guys, they're not getting, the tight ends specifically are not getting that giant boost that you're going to get from those other positions in the first couple of years. So there's that kind of give and take. It's just kind of the question of how long are you willing to hold this guy before you start seeing that advantage that you're looking for, Jake. And especially when you're talking about Travis Kelce, who's like the game-breaking tight end that he is, like it's a very rare that that's going to happen. Like,
not to just beat a dead horse here, but Kelce is like 34 years old at this point. Like at some point he's gonna hit the wall and someone's gonna have to take the reins of tight end one eventually, right? So like, who is it?
You want to know what I find hilarious is I just imagine all the Kelce owners winning their league and then at 112 being like, yes, Dalton Kincaid, my next Kelce. Like, and just they all in unison click the draft button on Dalton Kincaid.
I mean, we do kind of have the next tier moving in with like Mark Andrews, Pitts, Goddard, if you want to throw in there.
I mean, like Goddard's already like 28 years old, is he not?
Yeah, maybe.
So like, sure, it's fine for a year.
Motherfucker
maybe.
Just broke out, like.
Yeah, so that's the problem.
Like that's the problem with a lot of these tight ends.
And he was a guy with second round draft capital, yeah.
But
all right, let's start getting on here though. So Michael Mayer. What do we think of him about him? And because we've kind of hit on Darnell Washington and Dalton Kincaid.
He's just not athletic enough for me to think he's going to be a viable long-term tight end.
I'm interested to see where he goes, right, in the draft, just because I agree. I would have liked to see him test better. Oh, excuse me. But at the end of the day, like, he got better every year in college, right? So like he came in as the top ranked tight end recruit in the country, whatever he was, and then just got better every single year in this Notre Dame team. And it's just like, what else can you really ask the guy to do? I mean, he's the prototypical tight end and he's exactly what you want, except he just didn't test as well on paper as you'd like to see. So, like, to me, I'm curious to see how NFL teams evaluate that. If he goes in, like, the mid-20s, I'm probably going to bump him up a spot or two, similar to Dalton Kincaid here.
Do you think there's a strategy in, like, trying to, like buy some of these? Because what, to point JT said, where it's going to take a few years for, like, that pick to really, like, end up like paying off your investment. Is someone like, I'll give an example. This is more like mid-second round, and these guys are kind of like early second, late first. So it's a little like a tier down. But someone like a Trey McBride, who Rookie
Perfect.
tight end.
McBride was going.
Rookie tight end. Didn't produce this season. Rookie tight end.
That's perfect because first off, he did start producing at the end of the season. He's hurt.
And he's someone that we all like.
The season. Yeah, perfect. Because guess what? I was looking at keep trade cut. Dalton Kincaid is tight end 9. Michael Mayer is tight end 8. And then you have guys who have already started to perform who are actually more athletic than those two in Greg Dulcich and Trey McBride, who are ranked a decent amount behind them, where you get them plus for the likes of the draft pick that Michael Mayer. I keep screwing up his last name, or Dalton Kincaid. Like, you're getting what I think are better tight ends.
You could get McBride now for what, like a late second?
Probably.
See, I think that these tight ends are better than those tight ends, though. I think that Kincaid and Mayer and probably Darnell Washington are all better than
Darnell Washington. Might, I mean, there's question marks on Darnell Washington's usage, what I think he's going to be doing, but I think McBride and Dulcich.
Let's be real. If we were making a real life Incredibles, I think Darnell Washington would be heavily considered.
Yeah, but the problem that we're relying on is NFL teams to make sense, which half the time they don't. So I don't know. Like, maybe he is just that kind of blocker. I remember at the start of before the combine happened, they were legitimately talking about just moving him to tackle. Like, that's kind of what we're dealing with Darnell Washington, even though I really like him. As far as Mayer and Kincaid go, I don't agree that they're better. I think from what we've seen so far from Trey McBride and Dulcich, and what we saw with their athleticism and how they tested comparatively to those two, the incoming rookies, I'd rather just trade and get the plus and go with the guys that I'm feeling pretty confident are good already in Trey McBride and Dulcich.
I think that's fair. And that's a risk-free line of thinking, but I don't think that they're better players. I can totally understand if you just want to coop up that value and cash out for what is usually a pick that is kind of annoying to consistently get value out of in these early seconds. They're usually just tough picks to trade sometimes. But this year it's probably different. I don't know. I like Michael Mayer. I think in the early second, it's good value. I'll scoop him up. But let's get into the mid second. So we all have Devin A-Chain at 204, except for who is that? Lounis. Where do you have A-Chain, Lounis?
205.
He is one behind us.
Oh yeah, he is. Oh my god, I'm an idiot. I like A-Chain. I like A-Chain a lot.
Yeah, that's why I'm surprised you have him where I have him.
I don't want to put him this low. He's just kind of getting bumped down. Because I think I've made up my mind. He's probably going to get what I think is like the early third round treatment, where there's just like one too many knocks on him for him to go in the second. But that being said, I think realistically it comes out that it's a pretty favorable landing spot for A-Chain. I would love to scoop him up in this early second in a lot of my leagues.
Yeah. I would love to grab him at 206 in our league, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Because he's someone that I've been looking at the late first round, but I just feel like these wide receivers I just like a little bit more than A-Chain now, looking at the profiles.
Yeah.
Oh man, he's so good though. He's so good.
Yeah, I've loved what I've seen from A-Chain. But
I'm moving him above Michael Mayer.
I'm surprised you have him below Josh Downs.
I actually think I was thinking about the same thing with the move.
I don't know. Dude, I love Josh Downs. I just think Josh Downs is a good football player.
Look, I have him below Josh Downs too, but I'm lower on A-Chain than you are. Yeah, I didn't realize how high you were on Downs. I don't know. I think A-Chain is one of those guys where it really is situational heavy. I hate being the one that does the draft spot, like where he ends up landing position.
It is important for him.
I think in terms of running backs, it's probably
just running backs as a whole, they're typically very situational dependent, just because if they don't fit the scheme right, if they have, the team has a bad offensive line, it's just very scheme. And if also
if the team just has like no running backs there, like you see someone like Tyler Algier
right. So like situation in terms of available touches even. So like running backs, just like Frank said, if you can get touches, you can get production pretty easily. So I just think all these running back rankings are gonna drastically change pending landing spot and draft capital here.
I do also think to build on your point with running backs and situation, rarely, like not rarely, but running backs, they typically have the first, and then the good ones hit their second contract, right? And that's really what we see from running backs. Whereas wide receivers, you could see them go on to their third contracts and whatever. Quarterbacks obviously have a long longevity. Tight ends, it just takes them forever to develop in the first place. So running backs, like if you're wasting like your first 2 years plus in a bad spot, like you're just the clock is ticking. Like you have like an Alexander Madison, for example, who I was never really high on, but people have been expecting him to break out. And it might just happen now, like 4 or 5 years into the league where Dalvin Cook's about to get traded and everything. I don't know. Running back is the one where I will make the situation kind of exemption or exception, I guess.
I don't know. The only thing I don't like is that I don't think that A-Chain's that good of a receiver. I mean, he puts up enough numbers.
He's decent.
I think he's decent, yeah.
Dude, I don't know. I think he's kind of trash as a receiver, to be honest. And that's the thing that is keeping me from having him in the first round right now, is that I don't really care about the numbers as much if I just don't like what I see that much. I think, okay, yeah, it's fine if you give him a screen pass. Like, it's not like he's freaking Dwayne McBride and he literally has blocks for hands. But
poor Dwayne McBride catching him straight.
But like, he just wasn't able to get the timing down of his routes coming out of the backfield, right? Like you look at someone like Le'Veon Bell, that's what made him really amazing, was that him and Ben Roethlisberger constantly on the same page, and he's just racking up those dump offs. I just feel like A-Chain profiles out to be one of those receiving type backs, but that's just not what he is, and it's a little bit weird. This is an interesting question in chat. What do you think the science of why football players are becoming smaller? I would like to research that. I think about this all the time, especially at skill positions. My hunch is going to be the fact that because the hitting rules are way more lax, you no longer have Brian Urlachers and like basically safeties that are Brian Urlachers just cracking heads. So also the fact that like, especially recently, you're like not allowed to contact the guys downfield. So I think you're able to get away with these smaller receivers a lot more because they won't die.
Yeah. And then also defensive players have to adjust to those offensive rules. So they have to be faster. If they have to be faster, they have to be lighter. It's just like a chain reaction here.
There's no Brian Dawkins anymore. What's his quote? Like, I'm gonna take that man's soul or something.
Yeah, he's gonna take his soul.
Yeah,
I'm gonna take his soul. I want to see how bad he wants to play.
Yeah, you don't have Brian Dawkins running around just absolutely destroying, because then you get ejected at this point in today's NFL. So I do think that is a point. And then, what Jake's saying, I think the scheme fits too. Teams are finding, just get the ball out quicker, just short intermediate throws kind of been the strat. So I honestly could line up and play receiver now. It's crazy. Let's go, school.
Yeah,
get him to the combine.
4.42 40 and you'll have a shot. All right, going into this mid-second round, man, I'll tell you what, from 206 on, I started having a really difficult time, not necessarily with which positional players I liked, but trying to decide like a Tyjae Spears versus a Marvin Mims or a Cedric Tillman. I think that like all these receivers around here in this mid to late second round, it's just becoming a little bit more annoying for me to fall in love with these dudes compared to, I feel like a Claypool is someone that I just really wanted. And in the late seconds, it's just snatch, 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 snatch. I don't really have a receiver like that this year right now, where it's someone that
Jonathan Mingo.
Mingo's probably the only dude who I'm like, okay, in the late second, I'm going to snatch up these Jonathan Mingos. Like
Jonathan Mingo.
No, I've
Give
been
me all of them.
When I look at like those kind of players, I'm swinging more for players that I think have like the highest ceilings. So that's why I still have Kayshawn in that late second. Just because I think if he ever did revert back to early Kayshawn, you're getting an elite wide receiver at the late second. Someone that we haven't talked about, but I have him at 201. You guys have him in your third, I think.
No, I haven't met
which might be fair. 212 is Sean Tucker, which it sounds like his stock is dropping due to health issues. But theoretically, if he is cleared from these health issues, like I had him as my running back 4 or 3, I think, going into prior to the combine before his stock really started to fall.
You still have no running back 4.
Yeah, so I have him as running back 3. Then that means I'm still banking on the fact that he gets draft capital, which I think is still possible. I don't know. It could just be smoke screen season for Sean Tucker. I'm not willing to like fully buy into it yet, but I at that range, like where we're looking at the 206s and beyond, I'm swinging for upside. I'm going for players that I think might get their job, might go back to like a specific season where they went off or something, might get full potential out of them. Did we talk about Hendon Hooker?
No, we can get into it real quick. I just want to touch on Sean Tucker. My rating of him and probably Kayshawn is like pretty unfair, but at the same time, at this point in a draft, like if I were doing a startup draft right now, so I was thinking about joining another pre-draft startup. I was really considering it today. I just don't want to touch him. You know, it's like Bean Counter's got his face planners from year 1, like rookie to year 1. I've got like my face planners from like, okay, if you're face planting before the fucking draft, that's usually a horrible sign.
Yeah, but we don't know if they're actually face planting. You know, we don't know where they're going to get taken in the NFL draft.
I've got a hunch that Sean Tucker is not going very high.
I might be right, but the medicals is just such a finicky part of everything, though. Because all things considered, if you take his medical exemption out of it and say he tests at the combine and tests average, right? I think we're talking about Sean Tucker as a top 6 running back, probably. Like, would that be fair to say if he was just an average running back? Yeah. So,
if he goes in like the top 6 rounds of the NFL draft, I will move him higher.
You think he's a 7th round pick at this point?
Here's the problem I have is that we take someone, what was the dude's name? The Tennessee tackle. He now plays guard. He got picked up by the Chiefs. He went in the 6th round because he had that heart condition. Trey Smith. That dude was a monster. I watched him at the Senior Bowl. Him and, I can't remember the other guy's name. The left tackle from Bama, Leatherwood. Him and Leatherwood were just destroying people on the left side of the line at the Senior Bowl. And it was like, okay, well, Trey Smith should go in like pretty high. I mean, he's just absolutely destroying people. He had that heart thing, but he played football already. He was still playing football, but I was obviously concerned. He goes in the 6th round. Makes no sense. He goes in the 6th round. And I feel like he was a safer bet than Sean Tucker. And I'm looking at someone that I thought was going to go higher in the NFL draft, and I could make a damn good argument was a better player at his position. Sean Tucker's got a heart problem. Sean Tucker is medically not able to run the 40-yard dash.
No, he was cleared.
Why did he run it then?
He wasn't cleared at the time. Now he's cleared. At the time of the combine, he was not cleared. Now he's cleared.
No, at first pro day, he didn't run the 40 at his pro day because apparently medical exemption or something.
Yeah,
you're talking about like last week.
Yeah, like very recently, the one where he did pull up a shit ton of a shit ton of reps on the bench press. I'll give him credit where credit is due. 29 reps was nuts.
How are you allowed to do 29 reps on the bench press but can't run a 40 if you have a heart condition? Where's that come into play?
I don't know.
Yeah, I
Make that make sense for me.
I think it's pretty fair though. If he goes higher than Trey Smith, if teams are like, yeah, I don't care, he's good enough, I'm willing to take the risk. Well, then so am I. Until then, I don't really want to burn a top 30, top 25 pick when I feel like I just have safer swings at this point.
That's fair.
Yeah. I'm reading chat. Skull's saying he thinks he could run a high 4.4 in the 40-yard dash. I have a question. Why are you on vacation in Boston in the middle of winter? I would never. I was actively trying to leave Boston in the middle of winter when I was there. Yeah, all right. We talked about Sean Tucker. Let's move on to Hendon Hooker.
Yeah.
Where do y'all have him at?
I'm the lowest out of the group. I honestly kind of wanted to put him lower, and I still might.
I have him at 209.
When the draft starts.
I also have him at 209.
I have him. I think I had him 212. Yeah. And I kind of want to bump him down a couple spots.
I just think if he gets first or second round draft capital, that's kind of where he.
I would be absolutely
belongs.
shocked if he gets drafted in the first round.
End of the first, I could see a team moving up for him at the end of the first to get that fifth year option for a quarterback. I could definitely see that, but I think he's just probably a second round draft pick.
Yeah, I think realistically he's going to be in that Drew Lock tier, and I think in the range of outcomes there is an outcome where Hendon Hooker develops into like a Derek Carr-esque, Andy Dalton-y type fantasy player. So. And honestly, like his running is decent, so maybe even slightly better than that, like a little bit more upside with that little rushing floor he has. But I firmly am just going to place him at like this mid-late second. I think it's pretty easy. Like generally speaking, any quarterbacks that's like an early second type dude, I'm going to plop him in the mid to late second of my rookie draft. I think that's a good barometer of if they're going beyond that, the risk is worth taking because the upside is there.
I think he's going to be the guy in the NFL draft that drops further than people are expecting.
Oh, no.
I don't know. He's just been kind of acing the process.
I get it, but I don't know. I don't think he is good enough for someone who's his age.
We saw Brandon Wheaton go in the fucking first round.
Yeah, how did that go? How'd that go?
Yeah, it was the Browns drafting a quarterback. Like
he threw 4 picks in his first game, and then was just terrible from that point on.
Look, I agree, but I still think he's going to get a good draft capital.
I think he's going to slide further than people think, and that's why I'm kind of lower on him.
I do think the issue
if he does go early second, I'll bump him up, but I think he's going to slide.
I mean, he's going to be out for like probably the entirety of his first year, right? So, because he tore his ACL, didn't he?
By the time he first plays,
or did he?
I mean, dude, it doesn't fucking matter how old he is. All right, it's a quarterback. Like,
the quarterbacks, I'm not concerned about age. I mean, Joe Burrow was old. Justin Herbert was old, like comparatively. I mean,
this guy played well in the SEC. Like Tennessee was a force to be reckoned with for a good amount of the season, and a large part due to Hendon Hooker chucking it deep.
Yeah, I just think the bigger issue is probably why we're not going to see first round Hendon Hooker is you probably aren't going to be able to use him for year one. Teams aren't going to want to waste. But you do get it back, I guess, with the 5th year option. So who knows? I don't know. I think that's enough of Hendon Hooker, though. We're going to be on here all night.
What about these other late second players? So we mentioned Jonathan Mingo as a guy that I'm probably.
Yeah, and Israel Abanikanda. I think he's severely underrated. I do think he is that next running back after Devin Achane. He is my running back 5, and I think he's just a guy that is being slept on. He's very young. People forget that he's still very young for any player coming out.
I think he's the youngest. I think he's the youngest skill player coming out, actually.
And I think another thing interesting about him and Tank Bigsby is that they're 2 dudes that are healthy, and I'm pretty sure they met with a lot of teams. So a lot of teams showing interest for good or for bad. I think in Izzy's case, it's got to be good.
Yeah. but I like what I saw from him at Pitt last year. I just think he's a guy that can come in and really just take over a backfield if he's given the opportunity. I just don't really see many flaws in his game, and I just think if he gets the draft capital here, I'm gonna jump all over him in this mid to late second value, because I just think that's too low for him. Honestly, I could, by the end of it, I could see him, ending up at that 204 range, something like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have him. I mean, you have him 206. I have him 208, but he's also my RB5.
I could definitely see myself moving up Izzy if he gets good draft capital. And he's one of these dudes that he's athletic as shit. He's got decent production. He's young. I could see an NFL team waltzing their way at the end of the second potentially. I really don't think that's outside of the range of outcomes.
If he goes,
I will say one player that I think I'm going to be trying to scoop up. I have him at 212. I'm hoping that he goes later. Just not sure that he will. Luke Musgrave.
Oh, see, he's not even my tight end for.
Because I think that the top tight ends are nice, but I think there's some nice value later in the draft at tight end. Luke Musgrave is one, and I'm hoping to pick him up in third rounds.
Yeah. I mean, I like Luke Musgrave, but I have Sam Laporta as my tight end for. I just think he showed a little more for me at Iowa. And yeah, I mean, I like both right here at this second, third round turn. I think it's a great spot to pick up some tight ends if you didn't want to spend big and get one of the top three guys, just so you could trade back, or just if you don't have that early second, you could still pick up a tight end that I think is going to eventually develop into a solid player in the NFL.
I guess I'm the highest on Luke Musgrave.
Where do you have Matt JT? 210?
210.
Where do you have Sam Laporta? Do you like Sam Laporta?
He's okay. For him, he's truly one that's just athletic, I think. There's not really much else for me to like of Sam Laporta other than he's crazy athletic.
I'm surprised you said that, because isn't he one of those super high target share players?
Yeah, but on a team that throws it like 5 times a game.
He might be suffering from a little bit of Xavier Hutchinson's disease, but he does.
I was even worse than Iowa State in terms of teams that throw the ball. Like, for them to throw to an outside receiver is like a miracle. They celebrate in the stands and everything. Like, I'm not trusting Sam Laporta's production. I get it though. He's getting helmet scouted though, because you have Kittle, you have Hawkinson, you have Fant. So
that's hilarious.
In there too.
Oh man! All right, we go into the third round. I think the third round, the most interesting player for me is easily Tank Bigsby. You guys?
Oh, I mean, I have him in the second.
Yeah, he's teetering at the end of the second, but for me, I guess in the third round, this guy could land anywhere. He really could in the NFL draft. I could see him going in the fifth. I could see him sneaking into the end of the second. I have no idea where he's going to go.
I think he's a solid day 2 pick. And if that's the case, I'm guessing when it's all said and done, he's going to be my running back 4. Maybe running back 3 against Charbonnet. Because I just think there's a lot of excuses that you can make for Tank Bigsby, because his production was down. But I mean, this Auburn team was just ridiculously bad. He was getting hit the most before the line of scrimmage and everything. Like, he had to avoid tackles and everything. There's a lot of excuses you can make for Tank Bigsby. So I think he'll get the draft capital. I think he's one of those guys that could eventually see himself in a workhorse role, but I don't think he gets it right away, which is why I have him more in that mid to late second area.
He does kind of profile as someone that's typically a workhorse back, played early and played well early. The only issue that I really have with Tank Bigsby, and it's a major one, and why I have him lower than y'all, is that wildly inconsistent. Yeah. Maybe some of that is because of the fact that he didn't trust his offensive line, right? Yeah. I don't really know. And maybe that's why, like, so many teams brought him in on a visit, is because, like, I do truly think that there is context needed around Tank Bigsby that we just don't have. And that's what's keeping me from putting him higher right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna go in circles about what I say. But I think if I'm making an excuse for anyone on this list, I think Tank Bigsby is the one that it'd be easiest for me to excuse away his red flags.
Who else do you guys like in the third round here? Now that we're transitioning into it,
I mean, I have Kayshawn in the third round here. I think that, at this point in the draft, Kayshawn's a guy that has too high a ceiling to really still be sitting on the board. Just because if he, like JT said, if he reverts back to what we've seen from him at LSU, like getting him in the mid third round is just an absolute steal, and it really shouldn't happen. But just the things that have happened off the field for him and is just not great. And overall his stock is just plummeting. So that's why he's there. There's reasons for him to be there. It's just a matter of, does a team take a chance on him? And if they do, I think that him in the third round is just such an upside play that you can't really pass over it.
My thoughts on the third round. After Parker Washington, I'm not going to really lump Jonathan Mingo in there because I still feel very weird about Jonathan Mingo. I'm not nearly as high on him as like people are starting to be. I get very concerned about this wide receiver class. Like I don't think you're getting many hits in the late rounds here. Obviously, you typically don't, but this one specifically just feels like it's not great. I don't even know. I think the lowest I was looking back, I think 13, 14 wide receivers go between day one, day two total. I wouldn't be surprised if we hit lower than that this year, as of recently, because I don't trust a whole lot of these guys later on. I guess I'll let that thought breathe for a second in case any of you guys want to jump on that.
yeah, I kind of agree with you. I'm having a tough time figuring out these receivers. Like I think that right now a lot of these receiver ranks I have are probably a little bit too high and a little bit too sunshine and roses. Realistically, there's going to be guys that, Rashee Rice, for example, could easily end up going day 3, and then all of a sudden you're looking at picking him up in the fourth round instead of somewhere in the third, right?
We are going to have, sorry, Frank, 1 second. We are going to have our Tutu Atwells, our Tyquan Thorntons, or whoever. The one guy that just no one expects to go super high, Felix Jones. Who do you think that is this year?
I think it's you want to know who it's going to be? It's going to be Tyler Scott.
Oh, okay. I'm as my wide receiver 18.
No,
I'm looking at him now.
It's going to be Tank Dell. That's who it's going to be.
Tank Dell got a little bit of hype, so I could see it. From what was it, the Senior Bowl?
Yeah. That's the only reason I want to say Tank Dell is that I feel like Tank Dell is one of those dudes that has been getting a little bit of hype.
Tyler Scott, he's one of the few that I'm like, all right, like I could see myself drafting him in the later rounds. Yeah, all right, that's your pick for who goes super high.
Yeah,
I just feel like it's a Tyler Scott kind of move.
All right. In other news, moving though off the receivers real quick, I think Tanner McKee gets third round, maybe fourth round draft capital. So I have him in my third round here at 308. I don't know where you guys have him.
Yeah, Tanner McKee's interesting. I did like him last year. I just felt like he kind of disappointed this year a little bit. So I don't know. I'm not huge into the back end QBs this year. I know that there's going to be a big clan of people around Stetson Bennett. I'm not really huge on Stetson.
No, he's not in my top 50.
I like Dorian Thompson Robinson DTR.
Yeah, so do I.
But the problem is that I like him more personally than I think that DTR is going to be a starting NFL quarterback. I think he might be an interesting backup. And then you kind of look at some of the other. I have him snuck in somewhere. Jake Haener. I like Jake Haener. The guy plays hard. He's fun to watch. I think he's a cool dude. But when you're comping him to Taylor Heineke, like, I think it's a good comp, but it's for a bad reason. The Taylor Heinekes don't work. There's a reason why Taylor Heineke's a cool story. It's because 99.9% of the time, that shit doesn't pan out. It's the same thing. It's like half the time, oh, yeah, this running back that got drafted in the 6th, he's going to be the receiving back. Yeah. How many times has that worked? All the receiving backs that come out of nowhere come out of fucking nowhere. It's like...
The J.D. McKissicks of the world.
Yeah, they're a J.D. McKissick, they're an Eckler, like, or they're actually a good player. You know, they're not like this. Very rarely, it's like this. Oh yeah, this 6th round dude, he's the receiving back. Like, no, get out of here.
Yeah, I'm trying to scan your guys' boards real quick because looking at the Taylor Heineke's, what quarterbacks you guys have. So, Frank, it looks like for you, Dorian Thompson-Robinson is the only other really quarterback of note on your board. Jake, you have Jaron Hall. I think this is Jake's link. BYU. You have him on, he makes it into the...
Oh, crap. He's coming out this year?
Yeah.
Oh, he's interesting. He's interesting.
He is.
Yeah. He's very interesting. So he snuck into my top 50. He's 49 for me.
I think I have him as my quarterback. Actually, it might be my quarterback 10 because I think I have him after Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
I might be missing someone. Do I have Tucker Kraft on here?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
do you have him in your list?
No, you
see
don't.
him. Yeah.
Okay, well, I was
But he's
supposed
a tight
to
end.
throw in Tucker Kraft somewhere above Sam Laporta. So,
Oh, you're high on Tucker Kraft then.
I think Tucker Kraft right around Tank Dell, right this area here in the mid-3rd. I would have Tucker Kraft.
Yeah,
I think
realize
that he's being
skipped
super
over
slept
Parker
on.
Washington.
Yeah, this is the point under Jaden Reed. Another guy that I think is interesting. Just down the sorry, I made a Frank row here.
The Frank Rowe. Yeah, I mean, he's like basically just as athletic as Luke Musgrave. Tucker Kraft is. I'm not really familiar with, South Dakota State.
Dude, he's
but-
Tucker Kraft has got that dog in him. I gotta say, he's got that dog in him. I think he's being really underrated. Another dude that like I could very well see going very early 3rd. I'm hoping he goes in the 3rd because if he goes in the 2nd, then Tucker Kraft is going to gain a little bit of hype. You're going to have the people, oh shit, 2nd round draft capital? Yes. Like, no, I want 3rd round draft capital, and then he's going to be slept on, and I can start scooping him up, scoop in the 3rd round with all my late 3rds that I've collected.
I don't even know if you're going to have to scoop him up in the 3rd round. I mean,
Listen, I've got plenty of 4ths and 5ths as well.
Yeah.
So if he's in one of there, I'll definitely scoop him up.
I don't think people are dying to go get Tucker Kraft currently.
Yeah, Skull makes a good point. What's his name? Mallory and Kuntz are also solid.
Yeah,
Late
round.
round.
I have him.
Yeah, and
Worth
Mallory's out of Miami, I believe. So both are good dart throws in this 4th, 5th round area.
There's a Penn State tight end who I think is okay, and then a Clemson tight end I think is the other.
Yeah,
one.
that Clemson tight end is interesting. I feel like the Alabama, I think it's like Davis Allen or something.
Well, Purdue tight end Payne Durham, right? He just made my top 50.
Was Alabama tight end?
Well, then there's the Alabama tight end who, if you remember, came out, scored insanely high on the S2 like cognitive test or whatever. The thing that's going viral on Twitter. That apparently CJ Stroud failed, and this is like what is supposed to be what the Wonderlic should have been, but I have no idea. I think it's just a hilarious meme.
Out and said that, like, I forgot who it was. It may have been Rappaport that like said some of the reporting on that with the scores where it was.
Someone one of the guys from S2 was on like NFL Today or whatever that ESPN show is, and he was talking. Or no, you know what it was? He was on McAfee. The McAfee pod, and he was talking to him, and he's like, "Yeah, so one of these quarterbacks like showed up to take the test, like after a pro day, like at like 11 o'clock at night,
excuses."
and he was just like pissed he even had to take it, and like whatever, and then they went back to him on another day, and he like drastically increased his score. I'm like, yeah, because the second time you're taking the test, of course you're gonna do better. Like, I don't know. It was just it's all
doesn't show up in the fourth quarter. That's all I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not putting any weight into the S2 test.
Oh yeah, I'm not either. I just think it's hilarious, dude. It's so funny. It's like they have like because have they been doing this for a while? All I see is like Joe Burrow was good. It's predictive. Like
Brock Purdy.
I think it's been done since 2017 or 2018, something like that. So 4 or 5 years.
I want to see who else scored poorly.
So Drew Brees actually went back and took it once it became a thing, and he scored really well. Shockingly, it's Drew Brees, right? But basically, if you don't score in the 80s, you're like, as a quarterback, you're like fucked.
I can't buy into that yet. I mean, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I just think that there's probably better metrics to go off of.
18% is kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's like Henry Ruggs getting like a 2 on the Wonderlic test.
Yeah, it's. I don't know.
Listen, they're not there to play school and to get the right fucking. Ooh, let me track all the balls. Like, no, I want the fucking dude to have a rocket attached to his arm and get me fantasy points. Right? Like, I don't give a fuck how he does it.
Yeah, Skull is saying in chat he thinks he could do well on it. I'm now trying to see my Myers-Briggs.
Dude, you want to know who I want to draft? Who's the best at Madden? That's who I want to draft. Who's got the best Madden scheme?
Yeah. Well, I think that's better for coaches. They should make coaches play Madden because
I think
Nathaniel Hackett would have sucked at Madden, and the Broncos wouldn't have hired him.
Dude, probably nasty.
Mike McCarthy would be terrible.
I think Mike McCarthy would be low-key nice.
Dude, no, he's zero idea on clock management.
Okay, he has some things to work on in his game, but I think he'd have a solid rushing game.
But yeah, I agree. Nathaniel Hackett would be disastrous.
But yeah, I just want to see, okay, is he calling the right hot routes and whatnot, or are we just one-play merchants? What's going on here? All right, as we get into the very end of the draft, we have it basically as the fourth round. We go all the way down until 502. I kind of have mainly here there's a couple of decent dart throw receivers here that I like. Michael Wilson and Parker Washington. Parker Washington was someone that I thought for a while was going to be a little bit higher valued, but he's kind of been fading. I'm willing to take a shot on him in the fourth. Michael Wilson as well. They'll probably end up as roster cloggers and picks that I don't like, but I'm going to draft him anyway. Michael Wilson specifically. I was just randomly watching a Stanford game, and he just popped out to me as a player that I thought could play, and have been kind of just keeping tabs on him ever since. Other than that, I actually do like the running backs here, and kind of in the third as well. The Mo Ibrahims, Chris Rodriguez's, even Dwayne. I have bricks for hands, McBride, like just snatching him up here.
The one that I sneaky like is Jalen Cropper. He is my wide receiver 20, so I mean, how much do I really like him?
Oh wait, Frank, I was gonna say I noticed you don't have Deuce Vaughn on your board at all.
Yeah, I'm basically completely out on Deuce Vaughn. I don't.
Wow.
I just think that Deuce Vaughn, all the people that have the naysays against Devin A. Chain need to like spin zone that around, bring out your Uno reverse card, and then point all of it to Deuce Vaughn. I mean, because I think that's where the issues actually kind of come out. Like,
I mean, it's not like we're like insanely high. Like me and JT, this is JT, right? Yeah.
We have a cult following.
Round at RB12 and RB14.
Yeah, you know who loved him was McAfee. McAfee loved him some Deuce Vaughn.
Okay, I think he's an awesome player. I think he's cool. I'm rooting for him. I am not betting on Deuce Vaughn. Like, maybe he can be like kind of decent, but what is that? Like a Tariq Cohen?
He's got similar build, similar build to Tariq Cohen.
I'll take him in the middle of the fourth.
Yeah, maybe it works out. Like, listen, if you're drafting him in the 4th, I don't care, right? Like, it's the 4th.
Yeah,
maybe I should have him in the 4th, right? I said I like the running backs here. Yeah, go ahead, throw him in there, right? Like, whatever. But I anything higher than that, I think is a bait.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add on. I'm not that excited about any player in this 4th round.
No,
I could tell in like past years, like there are different players that I liked for reasons like Seth Williams or.
I was gonna say I noticed
Terry.
that when I was like filling out the end of this draft, I was like, I feel like I don't know, maybe I just because I'm more busy with work, I mean, I've been able to like go in depth into some of like the 4th round prospects as much as I would in years past, but I still have a pretty good understanding of like everyone in this range. I feel like years prior, I was kind of more into some of the guys in this range rather than today. I was like about like each pick post like once you got into the 4th round. Like it's not like I like Deuce Vaughn a lot, but I was like, I guess he's probably the best there at 407. And then I mean, I
think a lot of clarity is going to be added when the draft happens and we see
get,
where
like,
the day
spots.
3 wide receivers lie. Because right now we have a huge tier of players that go from like could be a 5th round pick or could go undrafted.
Mm-hmm.
And we just need to see, okay, which guys get drafted, which ones are the high value UDFAs. And then from there, I think it's easier to like, okay, now I can go and I have like a better list. Because like, in years prior, I would go through and actually watch all 80 potentially draftable receivers. Like, dude, I'm just not doing that. I'll wait for the fucking draft and then I'll see, okay, these guys got picked. Now I've gone from having to scout 80 dudes to now I have to scout like 20. And then go from there. So, all right. I'm getting pretty tired. This is the end of the big board here as well. If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. We're going to have the draft stream going on Thursday, so tune in for that. That's going to be some absolute shenanigans, as per usual.
They always are.
I mean, this draft is just going to be more exciting because I feel like we have like less of an idea than any of the other previous drafts that we've done about where guys are going. Like, no one knows who the fuck is going 102, 103, 103.
Yeah, after 101, which even 101's...
Even 101, but like, we kind of figure it's going to be Bryce Young, but after that, it's...
Dude, it's going to be so hype when Will Levis gets on the stage and just double fists Mayo. Like, it's going to be nuts.
Coffee.
Yeah, no, I'm excited.
But yeah, thank you guys so much. Skull, Parker, everyone. Really appreciate it. Peace out. Have a good one. See you on Thursday.